from that initial, locked in profit of about, 25,000, we were able to actually get closer to about 70 on this one with about 4 to 6 weeks worth of work. So,
Well, that's a home run.
Welcome to the No Limits Podcast, where limits do not exist, where you can create cash flow, equity, and real freedom with the power of real estate.
3, 4. Now, we will begin.
Welcome to the dojo. The dojo.
How to do great deals in the most competitive market. Today, I'm going to share an amazing story of a student who's in a very, very tough market, who's doing big deals, doing great things, and has got an awesome story. So that is the topic of today's show. Can't wait for you to hear from him. Now, if you have not been to our website and this is your first time listening, head on over to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com and download a copy of the MAP, the Massive Action Plan, whether you're trying to do your first deal or you're trying to scale up to a 7-figure business. You got to go down there, download the MAP, and it's going to give you a step-by-step plan on doing your first or next deal. And when you're ready to scale, okay, this blueprint is going to take you there. So make sure you go to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com and download the MAP today. So today's guest is Solomon O, who is a total rock star who started out probably just like you. And so I'm looking forward for you to hear his story and how he's done his last couple of deals, mostly in very, very, very competitive markets. So Solomon, let's get right into it. Are you there?
I am here, Todd.
Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. Can you do us a quick favor and tell us your story on how you got started in 60 seconds or less?
Okay. Yeah. So, as probably a lot of you guys have heard, I actually kind of went into the personal development world and came across the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. Somehow that kind of had me looking through like YouTube and finding things on wholesaling and kind of real estate investment. And that's kind of how I made, I guess, my entrance into the world of real estate. I think it was back in like either 2015 or 16. Did a little bit more of like, kind of prospecting at that time, being a little bit more aggressive on the phones, trying to make something happen. And then, actually my deal was through a follow-up, kind of like, Todd preaches on his podcast. And it was actually about 12 months later where I popped my first wholesale deal for, I think it was maybe 25,000 together. That was the total. And then my net from that was about half. So, cause I actually partnered with someone to do that deal. So that was back in 2016.
So
But,
what were you doing when you were kind of Googling through that YouTube, Solomon, right? Like everyone's seeking, listen to podcast or YouTube. They're at that like moment where they're in their living room or the car. What were you doing for a living and kind of what was the drive for you to start the Google?
Yeah. So actually I've always kind of been one of those guys who, really I guess it's more about like the background that I had. So at the time I was working within like commercial real estate, doing like management of commercial buildings, mostly office buildings and mixed use stuff. But then there was one day where I kind of actually looked through like I think it was either a general ledger or maybe it was a budget for a building and I hope my former boss isn't listening to this, but I looked at what his kind of essentially a salary was, right? And the guy's like in his 60s and God bless his heart, he's a great guy, but he didn't even break the 6-figure mark at the time. And I'm sitting there, I think at like either 26 or 27. And I'm like, dude, I can't do this, man. Like I gotta try something different. And so I think that's kind of what got the wheels turning to kind of have me looking through places like YouTube or Bigger Pockets or some of these kind of other websites to see how I could kind of expand out of that. But
Right. So this is really, really interesting. So if someone's listening to this and they know that you were in commercial real estate, it's actually, you were managing a management company. Is that
yeah, I was working with a management company. Yep.
And so, it seemed like you were unhappy with that. And you were saying that your boss or the owner of the company wasn't even making 6 figures managing buildings.
Yeah. So you obviously want to be on the ownership side.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you see the distributions that are going out, to the owners, that's the side you want to be on, not
Yeah,
the management side.
absolutely. So if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I should get my real estate license or, I should, manage buildings to get started, learn from Solomon. The money is in the negotiation, the acquiring, and working with managers, not being the manager.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
that is awesome. So if anyone is listening to this saying, "Well, Solomon started there, maybe I should," I think we should learn from each other, right? And say, "Hey, let's skip that part."
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, that's just kind of what happened, and I decided to take take a shot, and try to make things happen. So
So I love the dissatisfaction, Solomon. The everyone's got to have this point where their income thermostat, right, it goes on. I've talked about that in the podcast where this says, the alarm goes off and says this isn't working.
mhm,
And for me, I talked about it when I was in the pharmaceutical industry. You kind of
mhm.
snuck in the general ledger there and saw some things, and that set off the alarm. And I just love that.
Yeah,
I could really relate to that story. So you said your first deal, you got under contract. It was a follow up. Love that, by the way. If you're listening to this, the money is in the follow up.
yeah.
$25,000. You split that, made 12.5.
12.5.
Mhm.
Yep.
Tell us about your best deal. I know we talked a little bit about this, how you found it, how you got it, how you negotiated it, and
Yeah.
how much you made. That's what everyone loves.
Yeah, so I would say, I guess there's two different ways, because I was at one point doing like outsourcing land for developers kind of in the Seattle area,
Mhm.
and kind of doing also that down here. I'm kind of these longer term projects where it takes a long time to get paid. I personally think that a best deal is probably going to be a combination of either the time and effort that you put into a deal plus the actual amount of money that you make on it.
Mhm.
So yeah, you could make, like 100K on a deal or 200K on a deal, which is great. But if the time for the actual project is going to take anywhere between 18 to 24 months, well, was it better just to do the deal, in 1 month and pop 50K? I don't know. Sometimes it really depends. But for me, I kind of look at it that way. I think this most recent deal that we actually did in San Jose. So as Todd alluded to, I'm actually in the Bay Area now. It was pretty quick. It was nice and easy. It was actually one off of a podcast where I kind of took some information that he had said. It's like, hey, you know, don't just always just try to go to wholesale right route, especially with how hot the market is. There's a good chance if you take these projects down yourself, you're going to make a lot more, right? And so that's actually kind of what we did on this condo. And by the way, I love condos. They're great projects. There's no rehabbing on the outside. The HOA typically takes care of those. All you're really doing is the inside. And so we were actually able to turn this around, and I think it was about 4 to 6 weeks. It was a small little condo, just under 1,000 square feet, where when we put it out to our buyer base, right? And
So can I rewind for a second?
sure, sure, go ahead.
Which, by the way, I love this. I love this. How did you find the deal?
So I actually cold called the owner off
Okay.
of a different property, and then he said he wasn't interested in selling the property that was essentially the distressed one, where there was non-paying tenants. The house looked like it looked like a scraper. It says in this area known as Santa Clara. And then he said, "Well, I don't want to sell this one." I was like, "Okay, well, do you have any other ones that you'd consider selling?" And he's like, "You know what? I actually do." And so that's how I got this lead. It wasn't actually even something on our radar that we were hunting. I just had that conversation with him, and he said he had another one he'd consider selling.
So you just asked the question, right? Do you have something else that you consider selling?
That's it. Yep.
So can I take a time out for a second?
Sure.
What I love about this, Solomon, and anyone who's listening to this, if you're listening to this in your car or you're on a run or something like that, is never assume that someone is answering a question, right, with the same way that you're looking at it, right? So if you're calling someone and asking about a property for sale and they say, I'm not interested, right? You can't assume that they're going to share that they have another property that they want to sell just because you're calling, right? Their brain may be working differently. So just the fact that you said, hey, do you have anything else, right? Or you asked is how you actually found the deal. Is that correct?
That's it. Yeah, it wasn't like on my mailing list. I mean, I'm sure it was on someone's mailing list, right? But it wasn't on ours. It wasn't stacked with like your typical distress points. And so I just asked the question and happened to get lucky. So
So do you have anything else that you want to sell? Was that the question?
that's it. Just, hey, any chance you have anything else you consider selling or maybe getting an offer on?
All right. So remember, if you don't ask, don't get, right? You got a homeowner on the phone, you're already screening them, you've built the relationship. Just ask the question one more time and you never know what's going to come out of that deal. Awesome. So
Yeah.
they've got this deal. All right. So how'd you lock it up, right? Did you meet with them in person? Was it over the phone? Did you send a notary out there?
Yeah, so what I did was actually, so the elderly he's kind of an elderly guy, and we'll just call him John for the purposes of this example. But John actually and I had a connect. We connected, I think, in February, and then I actually continued to follow up with him until about April. And then in April, I met with him in person, saw the property. John's price was just too high, and he had a couple other people come over and give him pricing on the property that he just wasn't satisfied with. Um, I followed up with him, and then I think it was in May when we actually met with John again. And we put I have kind of like a spreadsheet where I kind of show them. He's an engineer, so he's a little bit more analytical, very C oriented kind of person. So I kind of outlined, I was like, hey, here's your options. I just put it in a spreadsheet and say, you could absolutely list this thing, get it, fixed up, and you can go ahead and sell it. You probably, do very well in the market. Here's your other option where you can kind of just throw it on the market and see what happens, right? You'll have some people walk through. I mean, it's vacant, it's not a big deal, it's just some stairs, right? Or C, you'd sell to us. You are going to be trading some equity for some speed and convenience for us on the
Oh,
sale,
I love it. I
but
love it.
we'll make it easy for you. And so he kind of looked at that, and John's like, you know what? I mean, I I want to work with you. You guys seem to be straightforward guys. And so he gave us a little bit of a higher number than the number that I suggested in the C column. And so then I looked over at my partner and I was like, well, Mike, what do you think, man? Do you think this is workable for you? And Mike kind of pauses for a second. He's like, and he kind of plays a what if game, right? What if we play this at people's house? He's like, well, John, if I did do that deal, right? If I accepted that and said, hey, I'm ready to do it right now, is that something you would move forward with today? And John's like, yeah. And so that's how we were able to put that deal together on a second follow up meeting after the initial appointment at the property.
Awesome. So number one was asking the question. Number two was, and I love, by the way, you used a lot of the techniques from the element selling system. I'll go back to it in a little bit. I noticed some stealth mismatches over there and some reluctance, which is
Uh,
killer. You use the speed. You're willing to trade equity for speed and convenience. Love all that.
yep, yep.
I got a big smile on my face right now. Actually, we agreed. Our audio engineer and producer over here said, "Oh, we got to all be on video next time." So we'll do that. But I've got a big smile on my face. So he agreed to do that. It sounds like there was some objections
Mhm.
there, which was just awesome. So tell us, and I know you talked a little bit about that objection, but tell us, how the deal ended, right? How'd you sell it? What'd you do?
Uh, yeah. So during that time, we have essentially our feasibility or our time that we're going to run inspections, and then we might actually pass by other investors on it.
Mhm.
John was very grateful. He actually handed us keys and a garage opener for us to kind of run through our inspections on the property. So we just put a lockbox on the unit, and we ran our investors. And I think it was probably so it was about a 10-day inspection for us. On day 7, we kind of figured out, most of the people, they all came in, they took a look at it, and the highest amount that we got above what we had under contract for was like 25,000, right? But I mean, and this is not to play out of a mindset of scarcity. You don't want to do that. You want to think of a mind of abundance and always ask for more. But I actually had either a podcast through Todd where I might have listened to where he said start taking down some of these deals, right? Once you get some capital, take them down and you'll probably make more. And so I know that he preached kind of cleaning it out. This one was a very light rehab. I think we might have spent like maybe 15,000 on it, maybe 16, a little bit more than that, but it wasn't too much. It was done in about 4 to 6 weeks. And so we decided, hey, if we can actually, put the money into it, invest it, and then actually turn this out in like 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks time, we're going to do much better. And so from that initial, locked in profit of about, 25,000, we were able to actually get closer to about 70 on this one with about 4 to 6 weeks worth of work. So,
Well, that's a home run, Solomon. Let me ask you this. By the way, that
yeah,
is just awesome, awesome, awesome deal. 15 or 16K for a 4 to 6 week rehab, turn a
yeah,
deal from 25,000 to 70. That's going to
yeah,
move the needle,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Where did you, how'd you source the money for this? Did you use your own cash? Did you get a hard money loan? What'd you do?
Yep. So it was a combination of hard money and then our own private money that we have.
Okay.
And then we actually do something kind of a little bit creative. Maybe lenders might not like this, but we actually wholesale the deal to each other, so we can actually use some of that money for our actual cost for renovation, if that makes sense.
Well, that's interesting. So you wholesale the deal and you finance that.
Yeah, so Mike will wholesale a deal to me. He'll actually get some of the costs on the actual, the lender will actually send him a check for a wholesale fee, and then we'll use that for the actual renovation of the
Hmm.
property.
That is
So,
very, very interesting. Of course, run that by your attorney, but that sounds really, really, really creative, right?
yeah,
I mean, obviously it
yeah,
goes through escrow and
mhm,
the purchase price and the agreement. So definitely run that by your attorney, but that is creative. What I
yeah,
like about that is, again, don't get caught up about needing money, right? There's lenders out there. You could partner with people. You could find a silent partner.
uh-huh,
But go out there. I mean, even if you had to take on a 50-50 partner, which necessarily I'm not going to always recommend, you still would have made 35,
yep,
which is just awesome. Awesome,
yeah.
awesome, awesome. So $70,000. Let me ask you, tell us about how you kind of overcame any fears or insecurities that might have held you back, right? I mean, what were some things that you were concerned about this deal or an obstacle or something that you had to get past?
Well, I mean, the market at the time was super hot, as you're probably aware of in California. You're in Southern California, we're in Northern California, but it's just, it's like smoking hot up here, probably down there as well. And we were kind of a little bit nervous about it slowing down. But, you just kind of have to take that leap of faith and go in and, you know, just look at your downside and say, okay, well, here's my downside. I mean, can I live with this downside if this is the worst case scenario? And we decided, yes, we could live with that. And we move forward. So,
Oh, that is awesome. I love that, the Sam Zell philosophy
yeah.
where you're saying, hey, what's the downside? And then is the upside worth the downside? Right. But a
Yep.
4 to 6 week rehab, I like that. I would have been comfortable with that. I think that is a phenomenal deal. Last question for you, Solomon, here.
Sure.
How has the no limit sales system helped you close deals, or maybe what's another favorite sales technique from someplace else, right? So you could share something from the no limit selling system or someplace else, but tell
Mhm.
us what's your favorite technique that you used to close maybe this deal or another deal.
I think it's probably I don't know if it's one specific techniques in no limit sales system, but I think it's a little bit of reluctance, and that's done essentially by kind of showing value that someone is probably better off doing something else, right? I always kind of preface my conversations with like sellers saying, hey, if you're like most people, 95% of the population is going to be better served by working with an agent. I can definitely put you in touch with one. What's having you, give like us as an investor a call, and how can we serve you, right? So I think that's probably one, like that call reluctance, but then also the stealth mismatch. That's the classic. They're like, hey, I can list it, and you're like, you're absolutely right, Mr. Seller. You can go ahead and list it, and you probably make a lot more money doing it that way. And if you want some resources to help you do that, then I'd be happy to help you with that, right? So
That's so awesome that you said that. I got another smile on my face here because that's like the one thing that really changed. I used to be really insecure talking to sellers
uh,
when I first got started, Solomon. And, you're always trying to hold on to the deal and keep it.
yep, yep,
And I realized for me that as soon as I started throwing it away
hmm,
and trying to convince the seller not to do business with me, that's when it came back.
yep, yeah, absolutely.
Or
That's
or right when I used to meet with sellers in their living room, it told me that
uh
if they said, that is what I'm going to do, it got me home really quick because I found out what the seller was really thinking and we had no chance of doing business.
yeah, and I think that's I mean, even for newbie investors, it's like, if you only have like 5 leads in your database and you're gonna, treat those leads like almost like like your own child or like a dog or something, like a puppy that you're like trying to nurture. But, you just have to be able to talk to a lot of people and have that, come from that posture that, a lot of people aren't gonna be a fit for your business and better off doing the ones, but ultimately working with the ones that are ready and a
Mhm.
fit for you. And I think you talked about this in another podcast. Is I think unqualified leads is probably the biggest energy suck and what essentially puts a lot of people out of this industry is that because they spend all their time with really unqualified people who have no like rhyme or reason to do business with you to begin with. So
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd like to add to that is, you mentioned that if you only have 4 or 5 leads, right, and you're holding on to them for deal life,
yeah,
your confidence is going to go down, right?
yeah,
So you've got
yeah,
to generate leads like every day.
Yep.
right? Every day, and then ask these questions so that, and the hard ones that you're scared to answer, so
Oh
that
yeah.
you could get off the phone with the people who are not qualified.
Right. But always send an offer.
Always send an offer. There you go, man. You've been listening to the podcast and listening to the system. Real excited, so it's no wonder why you're doing deals. And by the way, this is one of the most competitive markets in the country, right? I always say there's a few of them, but you know, the Bay Area, man, it is. You can do very, very, very big deals up there. Some of the biggest I've seen, but you are going to have to really nail down your leads and your sales system, and you could do some doozies. So, Solomon, thank you so much. If you want to share a tip for somebody or some parting words, and then I always like for my audience, if you want to share your Instagram handle so people can send you a message, you want a joint venture with them, that's only
Mhm.
meant to be a benefit to you. So if you want to share it, share it. If not, you can just give some parting words and we can end the show.
Yeah. So actually, my Instagram handle is gonna be it's Uncle Sol Zero. So it's like UNCLE Sol SOL and then the zero. So that's my Instagram handle. You can find me there and connect with me. Just send me a DM if you want to talk or if you have some deals you want to collaborate on. In the Bay Area or Northern California in general. And then I guess parting words. It's like fear is a real thing. I mean, it's a real thing. Like it's a real emotion that most people feel, but you just kind of have to, you know, think about what your downside. I think that's like probably the best way I got over like a lot of my fears. And spending like marketing was like one of the scariest things for me when I first started this thing. And now we're spending a couple $1,000s a month on marketing consistently. And saying, hey, we're going to get that back in, maybe 90 to 180 days. It's going to work out. It'll figure itself out. But yeah, so having that kind of posture, I think, is really helpful to keeping essentially people in the business long term. But yeah,
So Solomon, thank you so, so, so much. If you guys are interested in the No Limit Selling System, go to nolimitsalessystem.com. I've got some free videos for you there, and you could buy it at the end of those videos. Or if you want to go straight to purchasing it, go to /backdoor. Also, if you love today's episode, go ahead and share it with 3 or more people. So copy the link and send it to 3 or more of your colleagues, friends, teammates, or people who you think would like to learn how to wholesale real estate. Solomon, it has been a pleasure, and I can't wait to speak to our listeners on the next episode. Talk to you then.